a benefit of working with us. Well, so I'm maybe the reason why we've had success is I'm weirdly passionate about entertaining. I love hosting parties, throwing parties, and I love trivia, Jeopardy, watching with my family when I was a kid. And so I found live trivia nights, which were really sort of lame when I started, and I got fiercely passionate about it. And so if I could give you this example, Dick's Wings, San Pablo Road in Jacksonville. I started hosting there 20 years ago. Another guy owned the company. And when I started, there were approximately 20 players, maybe 4 or 5 teams every week. And it was, pretty sedate. And so I remember I trained with the guy the first week and there were 20 players. And then I trained with him the second week and there were 20 players. And then the next week was my first week to start. And so this is about 20 years ago. And this is before texting. So I literally had to make phone calls. Can you imagine? And I had to talk to people, and I invited them to play. And so my first night hosting at Dick's Wing San Pablo, which had 20 players before I ever got there, had over 100 players for the next 10 years on a Wednesday night while I was hosting this Trivia Nation game, or it was called something else at the time. And my social life just expanded, and I was the center of attention, and I loved it. And to me, it didn't matter. I was like, I'm going to figure out how I can make this my career. I hate to say this, I'm awesome at it. I wish I was good at neurosurgery. I wish I could be a fantastic city manager. I wish I could desalinize the ocean so that we could have fresh water for something.
But what you are good at is putting on a fun evening out for families, friends, dates, whatever. That's what you are good at. So in a way, you're changing the world. You're making people happier. Don't diminish it.
Thank you.
Where would we be without you?
No, I thank you. I serve a purpose.
You have a purpose.
And so
you have a special purpose.
No, I think so. And so so around Jacksonville, there were a few live trivia nights. Remember, 20 people wasn't very exciting. And so I bought the company and I changed how we did things and really put a service perspective to it and a flair and
some quality control.
Quality control. I hired cool people. Fun people. I paid them more than the previous guy. We charged more to our customers, and then we attracted more fun, cool players that were really enjoying the experience. So we turned what was a relatively sedate, lame, maybe uneventful night of 20 maybe geeky players that weren't even spending money, and it wasn't really helping any restaurants, and it wasn't really creating camaraderie or a community. I turned that from 20 players to say 60 or 70 at all the venues we work in. And we started to work in more fun places that were very, very successful. As an example, very thankful to John Valentino, who's an excellent customer of mine. He owns all the Mellow Mushrooms in Jacksonville. He's the #1 franchisee of Mellow Mushroom. We're in all of his locations. We have 100 players at all of his locations. It's so fun.
Can I ask you a question? And you're absolutely welcome to say that's really not my place to say. A given restaurant on a weeknight, like a Tuesday, they might make what? Like what might be that without trivia, what could be like a normal take? And then if they have a successful trivia night, what could it be? Or is that just none of my business?
No, that's a perfect question.
Okay, because I'm dying to know.
So some venues, our average venue, it depends. We like to work with venues that do over $2 million in annual sales.
Sure.
So we're typically working $2 million to $8 million. Some stores, we work in some Miller's Ale Houses, those do $8 million in sales. We work in some Duffy's, those do $6 million in sales, whatever it might be. So on a Tuesday, it depends on the location. Some of our locations do $1.5 million in sales, but maybe a guy does $5,000 on a Tuesday. And so he's doing 1,000 of that or 1,500 of that at lunch. And so he's doing 3,500 at dinner. And so if you hire Trivia Nation, our goal is always, for what we charge, we always want to increase sales by at least $1,000.
Okay.
And so if we do that, I always set expectations for our customers to increase by $1,000. We hope to do more, but that's where we want to get to.
Okay.
And so, Eden, the nice thing about increasing sales by about $1,000 is also, so that person, I'll get into you with costs if that's okay. Food costs, liquor costs, wine costs, all that stuff in restaurants and bars, it's about 30%. Food is 30, liquor, beer, wine is lower, 17 to 25%. So essentially, if you increase sales by $1,000, their costs are only 30% of that, so that's $300. They might have to increase labor a little bit, put an extra server or bartender on, or possibly back of house, maybe a cook for another couple hours, but we only increase labor by a little bit. So $1,000 increase when we charge what we charge is a literal, to quote millennials or whatever, or Gen Z,
Literally.
a literal, it's a double their return on investment. So they pay us a particular amount of money, I give them that money back, and then they get that money in profit, a double return on your investment. And I do want to tell you, don't listen to the guy that can double your money, right? Because you should listen.
He's usually not telling the truth.
Right. But I will tell you, call any of our customers. They will tell you that we do it all the time.
But it's another thing too to talk to somebody who says my goal is to double your money, and if it doesn't happen, it's not like you're saying give me all your money and I'll double it. You're saying take a flyer on me. Let's try it for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and then I think you're going to see you're going to double your money. I'm pretty darn sure. And then the other part of it is the residual part where people then have now tried out your establishment that maybe never would have gone before. And so they might return even on a different night or a regular basis.
Yes, we're bringing in new guests all the time. And of course, I want to really compliment our customers, our venues, our restaurants and bars. It's taken 20 years to get to be able to work with the folks that we work with. We used to have to take business at places, Eden, that sucks, okay? And I do also want to tell anyone that's listening, don't go into the restaurant bar business. It's just not, especially the independent restaurant bar business. It's so difficult, and 2024 is not the time to go into it now. But if you're excellent at it, go ahead. But I mean, my goodness, the percentages. 90% of businesses go, or 90% of restaurants go out of business within the first 5 years. Something like 95% in the first 10 years. I don't like to work with restaurants until they've been open 10 years.
That's really smart. I got to tell you a funny story. I came to you because I'm a regular team trivia player with, first it was all the families in our neighborhood, and then sometimes it became just the adults when the kids were old enough to not have to lug along. It was great for a family night too, because sometimes you'll find your kids actually know some things. But we had this one run where place after place after place would close up after we would play trivia there. And then we finally realized, okay, here's what's going on. These places, they're bringing trivia in as a last-ditch effort to stay afloat, whereas you're working with successful restaurants. We were going to these places that were getting the one-off trivia companies maybe, and they were doing it because they needed to keep their doors open one more month or what have you. And we were starting to think we were the problem. Like, are we a jinx? What's happening here? But I think that is definitely a measure of success. If you're saying that these companies that own 10 successful restaurants in the community have you out there, some of them 2 nights a week, doing music bingo and trivia. What's music bingo? By the way, because I've never even been to a music bingo game.
Well, if I could, thank you for recognize that. And so I want to tell you, a challenge in my business is 80% of the venues that come to us that fill out our email form, we don't want to work with. We can't work with. We know that they're grasping at straws. Their brand is not strong enough, or their business is not strong enough for us to help them. So, and we know they're never going to pay us. So what a challenge to have a business where 80% of the people that want to work with you, you can't do business with them because you know that it's not going to work. I have a large investment that I have to make when I start working with a venue. I have to hire a host. I have to train them. We have equipment. There's lots of resources, and there's marketing. All of that is very front loaded. So all my costs are at the beginning. So if I don't work with a customer for at least 6 months, I don't make any money. And so fortunately, you're mentioning, you talk about all these other places went out of business that you were doing trivia at. Yes, it's typically done at failing restaurants. Guess where our most recent new customers have been from? Miller's Ale House. Duffy's, again, has 35 locations throughout Florida and growing. I don't know if you're familiar with the brand called Applebee's. And Applebee's is fantastic, by the way. I love their food and their service. There's always a manager on the floor. They're always clean. And Darty is a massive franchisee here in Florida. And we just started working with them. Super professional, excellent. They treat us with a ton of respect, and we love their guests and their staff. So we are only interested in working with larger brands, growing brands, people that understand expectations that these things take time. So yeah, we're thrilled. And it's just, I am so glad that you mentioned that when you had been playing trivia at places that you noticed that the places closed. Of course they did.
Yeah, well, because they brought in tribute because of the reasons we said. But then when we started doing things like going where we now go, which is V is where V Pizzas around town. I know that they all have some manner of or both of your products, and I host at one of them. Then also some of the country clubs have gotten into the mix, and I want it, which is great because members love that.